Hello, everybody. It's Argent here with my co-host Serp, and today we're going to be talking about the stuff from North that's coming out of North Korea. Um, so, for those of you who aren't aware, there's been rumors that Kim Il Sung is very sick, and now there's rumors that he's either in a coma, on the verge of death, or just outright dead at this point in time. Um, so, what have you heard about it? One second. Is there some boomer stuff going on here?
No, I left to push the talk on.
Oh, okay.
I'm so basically, like allegedly, there's Chinese sources that are saying this, and now outlets in South Korea, Japan, and the United States are saying it. That he is, and this has been going on for a few days. So today was Military Foundation Day, and he didn't appear.
Right, because I've heard various people, like some people have been saying we have no way of knowing what's going on, which I guess is true.
We have no way of knowing what's
They're
going
saying
on.
it could be like weeks until we know, like if he's alive or dead or whatever. Oh, Kim-Jong-Un. Sorry, I get them mixed up. They all have very similar names. Um,
Well, I mean, there's been no military movements, which would mean that there hasn't been a coup.
right. Is there a likelihood of a coup happening? I mean,
We don't know.
there's not a clear
Like, know nothing. Thing about North Korea.
there's not a clear successor, is there?
Well, here's the thing too. Technically, they are a monarchy according to their constitution.
Oh, it says only a Kim can rule.
In Clause 2 of Article 10 of the 10 Principles of the Establishment of the Monolithic Ideological System, the party in the revolution must be carried eternally by the Bokudu bloodline.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, they are legally a monarchy. That's
So,
pretty funny.
do you know like the family tree?
Yeah, it's Kim Il Sung, then Kim Jong Il, then Kim Il Sung is the current one. I know it. I just get confused because they all have.
No, I was just sending you a family tree
Oh, okay.
list. Discord.
Isn't
So,
isn't the current one? I think he's a quarter Japanese, isn't he?
yeah, there's a lot of Japanese blood running through there.
It's just funny given like the ultra pure um, stuff. So that's
Yeah,
it.
his mother was born in Osaka.
Right. So okay, so that is part of it. Just let's see here. So who's still alive? I've heard his sister floated a lot as
Oh,
being a
you
success.
mean like his sister, the Fem Dom dictator of Korea,
Yeah.
Kim-Yo-Jong? Kim-Yo-Jong is currently an alternate member of the Politburo, Vice Director of Propaganda and Agitation Department. So she has some power. He has a older he has a older brother that isn't doing anything currently, but he also has an older half uncle who just came back into the country a few months ago. He was a career diplomat, Kim Pyong-il.
Right.
His older brother, the older brother that wasn't assassinated, uh, his older brother that wasn't assassinated, he's supposedly in a rock band in North Korea.
I'm sure. I'm sure it involves rocks and a band and maybe some chains.
Well, no, supposedly he was in Singapore watching an Elton John concert.
Oh, okay. So he just decided to just stay out of politics, or he just wants
Yes, Kim Jong Chul.
So he probably won't be the successor.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking that if you have a successor, it's going to be this half uncle.
You don't
And
think North
Pyong-il.
Korea would accept a female? I don't think they
No.
would.
I think if we had one, it's going to be Kim Pyong-il.
Right. Let me just look at the family tree. Uh, does he have any power within? Let's see. Ambassador to the Czech Republic, ambassador to Poland.
Here's the thing. Kim Jong-Un, before he ascended to the throne, he was outside of the country, kept safe the whole time. Kim Pyong-il, he was kept outside of the country and he appeared to be safe the whole time. And he was only recently brought back in.
Right. Okay, so Kim Pun Il was. Sorry, is that his. Oh, his uncle? His half uncle?
His half-uncle.
Okay, so his half uncle. Right. Right, right. Sorry, just taking me a minute to kind of grapple with all of it. So there's really only two real candidates, his uncle and his, I guess, his sister. I know that they wouldn't accept a woman, but she seems like of the other family members to have the most actual power.
His uncle is a career ambassador, and his sister is a high up member in the political class.
Right. Yeah, if I had to bet, it'd probably be his uncle. His brother doesn't look like he has any
Clout.
real, or just interest in succeeding. I mean, I guess you could.
Also a half sister to Kim Sol Song, who is 45, and she's supposedly part of like the literary affairs department of propaganda, and she led the security schedule for Kim Jong-il. But again, I'd say the younger sister is exerted a lot more public image. For instance, she went to the Olympics.
As an athlete or just as a.
Is Erber a representative of DPRK?
I don't know. I don't think it's out of the question that she'd inherit.
So, what you want Fem Dom North Korea?
Don't you?
I don't know. If you had Fem Dom North Korea, it's kind of a dark world because historically speaking, women start much more war statistically than men do.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you want Femdom Korea, then we might have a nuclear war.
Right. Someone in the chat says this whole situation is starting to sound more and more like an anime. Yeah. So it's not surprising that like he would die. Kim Jong Un would die from some sort of medical issues because the dude is morbidly obese.
He's a little tubby. He's
I,
a tubber.
I think he also has. I've heard rumors he has diabetes.
I mean, look at him.
Yeah.
Look at that chin. I've never seen like a triple chin like that. It's so gratuitous.
Mm-hmm. I need to put another picture of him up. So my understanding is kind of what happened was basically he didn't really change anything when he came to power, but he gave the impression that things had changed, and he kind of used Trump as like a cardboard cutout to try to make it look like, look, I'm hip and cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I don't think anything happened. The thing about about North Korea is that we don't know what's going on there. We can only assume the identity of the country from expats, which sometimes you gotta wonder if they're even real. Then what they objectively do outside of their own country, and that's pretty much it. Like most of what we know comes from like South Korean tabloid propaganda.
Well, yeah, South Korean propaganda, or I guess leaks from China, or like just some other stuff like that. Someone says he's so fat he looks more Russian than Korean.
What? I'm confused. I think he's just a tubber. He's just an innocent tubber. Look at him.
I like
He just like basketball. Like, stop judging him.
I like how Mr. Medicare said that he'd probably beaten Plague Inc. on the highest difficulty. So
Yeah.
no, because North Korea is like I think the only country other than maybe like one or two Pacific islands that has claims to have had no cases of
There's
corona.
persistent rumors that corona spread throughout the country and that there were, cremation bonfires and stuff.
Oh, so okay, so the quarantine might not have worked. Is that just maybe from illegal immigration from China or something?
I mean, there's a whole amount of things that can come through. You have to realize is that North Korea has a very active meth trade with to China. Most of China's meth comes through North Korea.
Does the government make that in North Korea?
Maybe.
Because I've heard that North Korea is engaged in a lot of like international crime as like a way to make some money, like
Oh
drugs
well,
or.
U.S. has or North Korea has like money laundering, and it has like highly advanced
Counterfeiting.
counterfeit machines. Yeah.
So, I guess there's kind of a an obvious successor in his uncle. You have to wonder though if at some point. So the worry is that there's going to perhaps be a military coup.
If there was a military coup, I think that would be the end of North Korea. I think that a militaries usually like military dictatorships very rarely rule countries for very long periods, and it almost always that they return to like the default government of the world.
Or they start a war to try to boost their popularity. I've always wondered if there might be a scenario in which the other elites decide to take power and throw the Kims under the bus and just
So
be.
the idea that there's going to be a coup and what they do is that they transition the country and then they just execute the Kims the same way that Tojo was executed at the end of the
Yeah,
Pacific War.
exactly. Everyone's just like, oh, it was all their fault. That kind of thing. Because like that would be kind of a useful fiction for everybody. Like it would be a useful fiction for people in North Korea, for like all the people who like ratted on their neighbors, for like South Korea and stuff. I've kind of started to come to the opinion I don't think they're going to be reunited.
I don't think they're going to be reunited in the near term.
No, I don't even know in the long term. Aren't their dialogues starting to diverge?
Yes, the dialogues are starting to diverge. Dialect.
Dialect. Like, because if I was South Korea, I wouldn't want to unify with the North. Can you
Well, there's
imagine?
no real reason for South Korea to unify with the North. If you take East Germany versus West Germany, East Germany was much. I mean, the backwardsness of East Germany, people talk about it all the time, but East Germany is extremely modern country technologically compared to the DPRK.
Right.
I mean, the DPRK, like, they don't have modern systems of irrigation and fertilizer.
Didn't you used to be more pro North Korea?
Well, I mean, am I like gratuitously anti North Korea?
No, I
My
just.
opinion is essentially I don't think that most people live in fear, and I think most South Korean propaganda is exaggerated and
Mhm.
not real. Like the idea he created the cheeseburger and like he doesn't have to pee and stuff like that. I don't think that's real. I think it's South Korean tabloids.
Oh, okay.
I think like the guy that was supposedly born in the concentration camp and then escaped. Obviously, I don't believe that's real.
But you do so, but you would say like the extreme poverty and like lack of modern infrastructure is real.
Well, they probably have like the poverty of like an African country.
Food might be worse than a lot of African countries.
They're probably as rich as Laos
Laos
or
is
other
like a fifth
backwards East
world
Asian
country.
countries. Yeah.
Technically, and I guess this like doesn't really matter because it's a closed economy. It's an autarky. North Korea's GDP per capita is like less than 2,000.
Yeah, but
Um,
how do you measure that?
yeah. Um, I mean, you just kind of have to look at that like satellite photo of North Korea versus South Korea. I don't think North Korea even has like many paved roads.
My understanding, most things are pulled by human cart.
Yeah. So I guess what we're saying is in this case, there's kind of two things that can happen. Well, I guess three things that can happen. We have Fem Dom, North Korea. His uncle inherits, and it basically stays the same. Or to prevent greater instability, there's some kind of military coup. Would you say those are kind of the three main options at this
Yes.
point? Now, here's the thing I wonder does anybody actually want the North Korean dictator Kim family rule to end at the end of the day? Like this, because I
I
wonder.
think Japan and South Korea don't want a nuclear armed North Korea. I think the entire world doesn't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but the kind of it being frozen in time, like, is better than like I can only imagine the human the refugee crisis that would happen once that state falls apart because it has to fall apart at some point. Like it can only decay for so long.
Actually, I don't. I actually think that it could sustain itself for a very long period of time.
Really?
Yeah, I think. Well, they. I mean, they're able to exchange, say, with African countries or other third world countries. They're able to trade with them. What they really need to do is slowly revitalize their world image and only become slightly hermit kingdom, if that makes sense. To be honest, it's their military power is awe-inspiring considering their size of about 26 million people.
Yeah, but most of their stuff is like obsolete.
They can strike North America.
If it works, I mean, I don't know. I kind of have my doubts about how well any of it would function. I still think if an actual war happened, South Korea would curb stomp them.
I
Um,
I think that there would be like tens of or hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of South Korean deaths in like the first few out like days.
well, it depends if they use nukes or not.
Well, they if they use nerve gas, they could kill like masses of South Korean civilians.
Right. Okay. The
They
problem.
probably have the greatest nerve gas supply in world history.
Yeah, I guess it depends whether they use weapons of mass destruction or not. Um, they could because I was watching Binkoff did a comparison, and basically he had South Korea would win unless North Korea used weapons of mass destruction, in which case they would probably win because it would lead to like total panic in the South. I kind of
Well, like they have artillery pieces which can decapitate all of Seoul basically. So
it's overstated.
if the South Korean military isn't capable of moving north,
Hmm.
they could just and they are like the South Korean like Seoul would be completely
No,
destroyed.
that's kind of a meme actually.
It's a meme.
Yeah, at least like from what I've read, it's there's only a small peninsula that can reach Seoul, and the North Koreans don't have a ton of guns that can reach Seoul. And this keep in mind, South Korea has like overwhelming air superiority, so they would probably just blow up all of their like guns in that position. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at Dien Bien Phu and the French Indochinese, their air support couldn't really destroy things in very mountainous terrain. The U.S.'s air superiority over Serbia didn't lead to almost anything.
Right, but was Serbia really using tanks and large army formations?
In the first war,
Right. I don't
in
know.
Kosovo, they did like nothing though, but they were using right-wing death squads.
I think it would probably be more like the Gulf War than like the bulk of it.
No, that's because of how shitty Arab armies are. Even after the airstrikes against Saddam, they had large amounts of tanks, and if they charged, they could have killed Abrams. Like the Iraqis didn't even know the difference between the types of tank rounds.
Was that before? I know we're getting off topic, but was that before Abrams got their modern armor that's like impenetrable?
91,
Mm-hmm.
probably.
Because don't they have like depleted uranium armor now, and it's like almost impossible?
Yeah, but I don't. I think that is there track impossible?
No, but I don't think Abrams has ever been penetrated.
Hmm.
Um, but let's see here. Someone said North Korea should back an IRA coup in Ireland.
Obviously.
I mean, the issue is it depends how. I think the amount of U.S. involvement would depend because I think the U.S. will intervene no matter what. But if North Korea used weapons of mass destruction, I think the U.S. would go further. I don't know how
I
much.
think that bunkers that are essentially impenetrable that they could sustain combat for years probably. You
I
have to realize is that in the first Korean War, the Chinese developed elaborate tunnels that were impenetrable, and the Americans could never dislodge them.
I also, if a war broke out, the question is what would China do?
Uh, I don't think China's that pro North Korea. I think North Korea is kind of. I don't think China wants to have South Korea on its border, but I don't think China would actively intervene to protect them.
I think North Korea is a white elephant. Like that's a pain for China, but getting rid of it would be worse. Because then they'd have to deal with a refugee crisis, and they'd have to deal with possibly South Korea on their border, and so they kind of have to prop it up, but they don't
I
really.
don't. I
Have
think they want to prop them up, and I think it's beneficial to prop them up. But the thing is, I don't think that they. I think that if a war broke out, I don't think that they would send in troops to protect North Korea.
Right. I don't know. I think if you had a second Korean War, it might actually just go the same way as the first Korean War, where
I think North Korea's position is essentially impenetrable. You have to realize the peninsula is extremely mountainous, so that's why it turned into trench warfare.
I think it would just be a massive. A lot of people would die. The front line wouldn't move, and who knows? China would probably stay out of it. China might only get involved if South Korea like pushes in, and it looks like North Korea is going to get decisively defeated. Because I kind of feel like leaving North Korea as is, even with nukes, is the least bad option for all parties.
Yeah, here's the thing: no East Asian Communist Party has ever fallen from power.
I mean,
Cambodia, the Communist Party that was installed by the Vietnamese in the invasion, they just changed their ideology. In Mongolia, they changed their ideology and became social democracy.
I think they lost one election in Mongolia.
They lost an election, but they didn't lose power. If that makes, they didn't be defeated militarily or through revolution. They established a new republic and changed the ideology of the party, and then were the dominant political party.
Yeah, so I think they've lost.
It's not like East Germany or the Soviet Union where the Communist Party was thrown out of power.
So I think they've lost two elections since 1990, and I think they've rejigged the system. So now it's basically back to being a one-party state again. I think a problem Mongolia had was the communists and the social democrats were running as separate parties. Um, but yeah, it looks like now it's just going to be that. I think in
I
Cambodia.
mean, when you look into Central Asian countries, most of them still have the local Communist Party change. Like Kazakhstan, the local Communist Party changed the ideology, just like it did in Mongolia and Cambodia.
Cambodia is interesting how they restored the monarchy.
But it is legally the same. It's the Communist Party still in power.
Because I think they briefly lost an election, but then like some shenanigans happened and they just immediately regained power.
Yeah, there was a little urban or a little conflict, a little strife, and then they regained.
And to me, Laos is almost as much of a mystery as North Korea.
Just how backwards it is.
Yeah, I just never hear anything
Well,
about it.
Laos is a puppet of Vietnam. The Pathet Lao are always subservient to the uh, Viet Minh.
Right. It just seems like not a lot has really happened since the
75.
yeah, since they got established. It's just kind of a backward hermit kingdom. Yeah, like Nur Sultan stayed in power um, for a long, long time. I think he only retired recently. I think,
Yep.
and that's more due to old age. And then I think they just yeah they just I think renamed. Oh no, they or it's kind of weird because like some of the parties remerged or something. But yeah, it's more or less they just kind of continued on as was, and a lot of them either became right winged or social democrat or like some non ideological control faction. So let's see. China's a Nazbol capitalist power. Very strange. So you don't think that they're interested in going to market socialism in North Korea or trying to emulate China?
I think very slowly. Vietnam is followed China's path extremely closely.
I haven't.
I don't know if you know that. And
How,
Cuba's begun as well.
how has Vietnam's economy been doing? I haven't really seen much about it.
They're growing. They're not like explosive growth, but they're doing pretty well.
Hmm. I guess that's kind of one of my. Sorry, this is completely different topic. But one of my concerns with some of the people in these circles who get a little. Uh, okay, sorry. How would you kind of respond to the kind of the thought? I feel like autarky doesn't really work. Um, at least not like
Well,
extreme forms of autarky.
extreme autarky doesn't work, but Singapore can't be autarkic, but Russia, Soviet Union can, right?
Right.
Um, what's another? Like the United Kingdom can't be an autarky, but the United States can.
Because didn't Spain like wasn't Spain very poor until it kind of started to open its economy up?
Yeah, well, it's a closed system, so there's only enough economic growth you can do yourself. I'm talking about as a proponent of autarky. I don't believe extreme autarky, but I believe in much more autarky than what would lead to what happened now with Corona Chan.
Right. I mean, I think there's a balance. I think there's a difference between have trying to be self-sufficient in certain core elements and just not trading. Because like I know an issue like we have in Canada is the government will try to introduce industries we probably shouldn't have. Like there's an obsession with developing a Canadian wine industry, despite us not really having a climate for it. Um, Okay, someone's asking what autarky is. Okay, autarky is the belief that your country should be as self sufficient as possible and that you should ideally not trade with other countries. Would you say that's.
Yeah, so part of Marxism Leninism is and why it leads to regimes slowly becoming more nationalistic over time is because Marxism Leninism puts a high degree of autarky forward as a deliberate economic policy.
Right, because they don't believe in trade. Um, that's a form of capitalism. But yeah, I mean, like it works for Russia. I don't know North Korea. Then again, does North Korea even want to become wealthier? Because if it becomes wealthier, won't that maybe threaten the
It'll
Kim?
fall into a J curve, and that the power elite will lose power.
What's a J curve?
It's a curve. So the idea is that when a country is advancing in wealth,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain point where it advances, or and it will lead to a democracy, and a certain point where the wealth it'll go too fast and it won't become a democracy, like Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So, like a country that's becoming wealthy, there's this idea that inevitably they'll have this huge push towards democracy. But obviously, there's certain countries which have not become democracies, which they became wealthy, such as Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states. But
Most
there's
oil
kind of a
countries.
problem with that. Is like, I mean, when you point to a country like South Korea or Spain, generally they're kind of intelligent, and how intelligent is Nigeria and Saudi Arabia by comparison, or Egypt?
Right. I mean, it also I think kind of depends on what your definition of democracy is. Like Japan is kind of de facto a one-party state. So I think the Liberal Democrats have only lost two elections. So I mean, by Western standards, I guess you could argue it's not democratic because there aren't really changes in government almost ever.
Why there's changes in government in Iran, but by Western standards, it's not a democracy.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're, yeah. One of the things I always find funny is like with PragerU and neocons who say like World War I Germany was a fascist state.
Even though it had a pretty well established democracy.
Yeah, I think the
And it
Social
was the Social
Democrats.
Democrat parties that were in power that
Yeah.
launched the First World War.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that Austro. Yeah, it's. Maybe we could almost do a whole stream sometime just on democratic peace theory, and
I
how.
think that there's no other theory I hate more in history than democratic peace
You know
theory.
what? We have some time, so do you want to talk about that a bit?
Maybe we should end this stream so that people can click on this and have our opinions on North Korea and then start a new one.
Okay, sounds good to me. Okay, guys, so we're gonna do another stream now on democratic peace theory because we didn't really have much else to say about North Korea. So we'll be back in a second.